Thank you for having me. My name's Dominique Pride. I'm research faculty at the Alaska Center for Energy and Power. My background's in economics, and today I'm going to be talking about a project that is currently ongoing here in the Fairbanks North Star Borough, looking at using electric thermal storage heating to improve ambient air quality and to reduce home heating costs. So as we are all aware, the Fairbanks North Star Borough is currently a non-attainment area for PM 2.5. And this is a problem because it's associated with cardiopulmonary illnesses such as asthma and heart disease as well. Wood burning for space heating is currently the largest source of PM 2.5 in the borough, but wood is a relatively low cost fuel compared to heating fuel oil. And so a lot of people choose to supplement their heating fuel oil with wood to save money. So this puts a lot of households in a really difficult position of choosing between healthier air quality and more affordable home heating. Probably 5-6 years ago, Mayor Ward had approached Gwen Holdman, he didn't approach her about it. He just mentioned in a meeting, he wondered if electric thermal storage heaters could be used to help mitigate PM 2.5 pollution in Fairbanks. And so Gwen, who's the former director of the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, had brought this up in a conversation with me. And I said, well, possibly, let's do a field experiment and see. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. And so we put together a proposal and submitted it to the National Science Foundation, and it was funded in September of 2021. And it's a joint project between the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Northern Arizona University, and Texas Tech University. And the overarching idea of the project is to see if these electric thermal storage heaters can be used to help with our PM 2.5 problem. And if they're charged a lower rate than our typical electricity rate at GBEA, could they also help reduce home energy costs? And so you may wonder, what is an electric thermal storage heater? And here is a picture of one with the cover taken off. And so essentially it's an electric resistance heater. There's electric resistance elements, but it has the added benefit of storage. So heat gets stored in these high density ceramic bricks, and they're enclosed in a insulated box. And so as the bricks heat up, they serve as thermal storage, and fans, when the homeowner wants to use the heat stored in the stove, we call them the Steffa stoves is the name brand. They flip a switch, which turns on a fan, and that fan blows air across the bricks, which heats the air, and it's then dissipated into the home.
It's almost like an electric powered.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, so, okay, if you don't mind, I'll take this one moment. So yeah, good morning, everybody. Just as a reminder, these presentations, as always, are for all of us, for you. So if you have any questions, any comments, I am monitoring the chat box. Otherwise, you can put up your hand, or you can simply take yourself off mute and ask questions. Regarding this, it's almost like a mini electric powered masonry heater.
Yeah, it's the same concept as a masonry heater in that it is storing thermal heat, right? So a masonry heater, you use wood, and then the bricks heat up and serve as like a thermal sink and store heat in your home. And this uses electric resistance. And so it's the same as like a baseboard heater, except the reason this is special is it has these bricks in it, right? So you can decouple the time from when the electricity is consumed from when the heat is consumed. And these are used or have been used in the UK since like the 1940s. And they're typically used in places that have time of use rates. So places that have, in the UK, it was when they built a lot of nuclear power plants. So with baseload plants like nuclear or coal-fired power plants, you don't necessarily want to cycle those. You want to run them full bore all the time. Well, electricity demand increases in the morning, goes down in the afternoon, and then increases again in the evening when everybody comes home and turns on their electric stoves and kettles and televisions. And so to try to increase electricity demand in the middle of the night, some utilities will charge lower rates. And with any type of storage medium, so with these electric thermal storage heaters, you can use electricity to charge them at night when the rate is lower, and then the heat is stored in the unit, and then you can use that heat the next day when you get home from work. And when rates would be higher normally, so you wouldn't want to use just straight electric resistance heating like baseboard heaters, this provides that additional element. These are also used in already used in Western Alaska, and they're used a little bit differently than the places with the time of use rates. These are being used in, for example, Congiganak, I believe, has 50 installed in homes throughout the community. And the electric utility is using them to help absorb excess wind. So when there's more, or when the utility has more wind generated electricity than is currently being used at any given time, they can use a radio frequency to send that electricity to turn on these electric resistance heaters. And that electricity is sold at a discounted rate. It's metered separately from the rest of the house. And this is really beneficial to both the electric utility and the homeowners, because the electric utility is selling something that they otherwise would have wasted. They would have had to curtail their wind turbines, and the homeowners like it because they're displacing a portion of high-priced heating fuel oil. And heating fuel oil is super expensive in our off-road communities. And so anecdotally, the people with these installed in their homes are saving up to 50% on heating fuel oil. However, no one collected baseline data, so we don't know actually how much they're saving, but homeowners say that they're saving up to 50%. And I see that there is a question.
And I will say, while you read the question, I just looked at Steph's website, and I see that these units are relatively compact. Actually, they're quite compact. I saw about 30 inches by 30 inches long by 24 inches tall by 10 inches deep.
Yeah, they're
So
about
not
the
much bigger
size
than
of a Toyo or a monitor. Yeah, they're comparable. And we actually have one in our lab up here at UAF. If anybody is interested, you can stop by and I'll show you. So Clark asked if there's an efficiency variable calculable for the storage circumstances comparable to oil or gas. So depending on the size of the heater or the storage medium, the smaller ones can displace about 1/3 of a gallon of heating fuel oil. The larger ones that have been placed in Congiganak have the storage capacity of about 1 gallon of heating fuel oil. And electric resistance heaters have an efficiency of 100%. So all of the electricity used is dissipated as heat, right? But unless you're getting a subsidized rate, electricity is really expensive. So you wouldn't want to heat with electricity unless you have a situation with like a time of use rate, or how they're doing it in Congiganak, where they're separately metered, and the excess wind generated electricity is sold at a discounted rate.
That was one of our challenges, is we were trying to just build a metrics where people could kind of compare costs in use for different heating sources. Is the fact that, again, the resistance heaters themselves are very efficient. However, the cost of the fuel itself, the electricity, because its production rate is actually fairly inefficient.
Yeah, so yes, exactly. Like, to generate electricity from any feedstock really is like a power plant. It doesn't have the highest of efficiencies, right? But the electric heat is very efficient. The way to compare costs would be to use a BTU cost equivalent. And I actually talked to Art, and what is Art's last name? He swung by my office yesterday, and he's with the Cooperative Extension, and he's revamping his some of their web pages this coming summer. And he asked if I would be interested in helping out with the fuel cost equivalent. So hopefully soon we'll have a web page up where people can look at different fuels, and assuming different heating appliance efficiencies, people will be able to figure out cost comparisons for using different means to heat their homes. So that should be ready by the fall. So the overarching research question for this particular project is, can electric thermal storage heaters be used to mitigate ambient PM 2.5 air pollution and energy poverty in Arctic communities? And so energy poverty is when a household is spending a disproportionately large portion of its income on energy services. And that includes cooking, space heating, and domestic hot water, and electricity to run their appliances. This project comprises 4 components. There's an electric thermal storage heating field study. There's air quality analysis and modeling, air quality education, and economic and policy analysis. For the field study, We've installed 30 PM 2.5 sensors and weather stations in both a treatment neighborhood and a control neighborhood in North Pole. And we picked the neighborhoods based on historic air quality data. We wanted places that had traditionally had pretty poor air quality. So in the past year, we've been collecting baseline data on PM 2.5 and weather data. So wind speed and direction, air temperature, and relative humidity. And the reason we care about that is that the wind speed and direction will affect where the pollution is. On windy days, we don't necessarily have problems with PM 2.5, right? It's on the days that are stagnant. And so Fairbanks, through an accident of topography and climate, is plagued with this PM 2.5 problem, right? We get temperature inversions, and then anything that is emitted into the air under that temperature inversion gets trapped until we have a windy enough day that blows it out. So unfortunately, when it gets really cold here, we are plagued with poor air quality. And so that was part of the impetus behind the study. So in addition to collecting that baseline data on air quality and weather, we're also conducting an annual fuel and transportation survey in the study area. And the first one will happen this fall. And the reason that we do that is there are things outside of the use of electric thermal storage heaters that will affect air quality in the area. And so a good example of this is the switch over to natural gas. As more and more people switch to natural gas, the air quality is just naturally going to get cleaner. And so we want to account for that, and we'll account for that in modeling, but we need to see how many people in the study area are using natural gas, and no one is right now because we picked areas above Hearst Road. But over time, as the gas pipeline distribution gets built out, more and more people will switch over. And so we need to account for that. And we will in our modeling. This summer, we'll install 18 electric thermal storage heaters in the neighborhood, in the treatment neighborhood. And then we'll continue to collect PM 2.5 and weather data for the following year, or for the following 2 years, actually. It's a 3-year study.
I'm sorry, I was putting a little note in the chat box that people could ask questions there. But regarding this test deployment of these heaters, I'm assuming that they would be asked not to run their wood stoves?
No, actually, the point of this is to see whether, if people have this option, if they'll use it, right? So we're not trying to take away anybody's wood stove. We are simply trying to offer people more methods for home heating, right? And so we were interested in seeing if people have these, will they use them? And if they do use them, can we see any measurable impact on air quality? And so, like I said, I'm not interested in taking away anybody's wood stove. I'm interested in giving people more options, especially for those times when we have really poor air quality, right? So maybe if there was a lower cost electric heating option, people would be able to use that instead of wood when the air quality was really, really bad. And so, like I said, people can use whatever mix of heating appliances they already have, however they want to. So in North Pole, the study area, I said we historically picked places that had pretty poor air quality. We picked 2 1 square mile plots, and one is the control neighborhood and one is the treatment neighborhood. And the way that we picked which was we recruited households in both areas. And then the area that had more wood burners was the one that we picked as the treatment neighborhood, and the other one serves as a control neighborhood. And you have to have a control because, like I said before, there are things outside of these electric thermal storage heaters that are going to affect air quality, right? So we need that control for to see, because we're going to use differences in differences. So you have the year 1 and year 2, and then you also have the treatment and the control, and then you can subtract those from each other and see if there's a difference. Because sometimes from one year to the next year, it may be a warmer winter, right? And so people would burn less wood and we would have less temperature inversion. So if you don't have that control neighborhood, you would attribute all change to the use of this electric thermal storage heater, when that's really not what was going on. As I mentioned, we picked the neighborhoods are both located above the Hearst Road or above Hearst Road. And the reason we did that was because the natural gas distribution lines have not been built out into those neighborhoods yet. But I suspect by the end of 2 years from now, they will be. So that's one of the reasons we have to conduct that annual fuel use survey in the area.
Certainly, that's the hope.
So for the air quality analysis and modeling, we will measure constituents and estimate the source contributions of PM 2.5 to determine if there are any improvements in regional air quality and climate gain by replacing wood burning with these electric thermal storage heaters. We will also model the collected PM 2.5 data, controlling for weather, so the wind speed and direction and relative humidity, to determine if there's a measurable difference in the PM 2.5 pollution between the treatment and control neighborhoods. And then another thing we'll be able to do is forecast how an increase in the number and concentration of electric thermal storage heaters may affect PM 2.5 pollution in the borough. So we'll have data on these two neighborhoods, and then we'll be able to say, okay, if we increase the number and also the concentration of these, like if there were more in the area, how do we think that would affect PM 2.5 pollution throughout the borough, not just in the study area. For the education component of the project, we're working with One Tree Alaska, and I don't know if people are familiar with One Tree. If you're not, you should really look them up. They're a great organization. They do STEM plus arts, and they're affiliated with the Agriculture and Forestry Experiment Station here at UAF. They are the birch sap people. So you might be getting emails from them, or maybe you've participated, or maybe some of your children have participated in tapping the birch trees in the spring. The sap is flowing right now. I think we're about midway through sap season. And they sell birch syrup and they sell birch caramels, and they do a ton of art stuff. If you haven't been to their studio, you really should go. It's a great place. But One Tree has a participatory action research teacher collaborative with teachers throughout the borough. And they're working on coming up with curriculum, not just for this project, they do it for other science projects too. They create science units for students. I think this will be through K through 8, but I think that they work with high school students and on other projects as well. And so teachers are going to gather information on PM 2.5 air pollution, its effects on health, and on monitoring PM 2.5. And then they'll use this participatory action research cycle to plan, write, pilot, revise, and publish science curriculum materials for a unit on PM 2.5 air pollution that will be taught in our FNSB schools. And so it's going to be a two-week unit, and it will include 3 to 6 lessons with activities. And one of the activities they're working on, which I think is a lot of fun, and they're going to be doing this over the summer with students, is they have a solar stove, and they use wet wood and dry wood. So first they'll burn, and they have a PM 2.5 sensor above it. And first they burn wet wood and look at how the PM 2.5. And then later they burn, right afterwards, they burn dry wood, and then they can show the students the difference in the PM 2.5 between the wet wood and dry wood. And they're going to do it with different species of trees as well. And then because the arts program affiliation of that, they're going to use the charcoal that comes from burning the wood to create art with it, and show how different species of trees and different moisture contents affects the quality of the charcoal as well. So that's a pretty fun exercise, and I'm looking forward to that. So that's the education component of the project. I'm an economist, and so my main interest well, not my main interest, but one of the interests that I have is this economic analysis component of the project. And we conducted and will conduct a Fairbanks North Star Borough Home Energy Use Survey. Some of you may have been invited to take that this past summer, and we'll conduct another one this coming summer. The survey asks questions on heating appliance ownership and use, fuel types used, heating fuel consumption and costs, dwelling characteristics, and demographics. And the reason that we're running this survey 2 years concurrently is because we're really interested in trying to calculate elasticities. And in order to calculate elasticities, you have to have at least 2 different prices. So you have to do it throughout time. And so we'll use the survey data to estimate own, cross, and income price elasticities, or I shouldn't say income price, just income elasticities of heating fuels. And so an elasticity, for anybody that's not an economist, is how sensitive one variable is to a change in another variable. And so for own price elasticities for, let's say, heating fuel oil, we were interested in how the quantity demanded for heating fuel oil changes with the price of heating fuel oil. For cross price elasticities, you look at how the change in the price of one heating fuel oil affects the quantity demanded of another heating fuel oil. And this is really of interest because some of the proposed regulations for air quality will affect the price of heating fuel oil. And so how is that going to affect the demand for other fuels, right? So if the price of heating fuel oil goes up a lot, we would expect heat or wood use to increase, right? Because they're substitutes. And so having the survey data will allow us to figure out what those cross price elasticities are for fuels in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. And the income elasticities, as I said, that shouldn't say income price, shows how demand for different heating fuel oils are affected by changes in household income. And so we will estimate the impact of electric thermal storage heaters on residential heating expenditures under high, medium, and low electricity rates as well. So having those price elasticities will allow us to do that as well. This past summer for the Fairbanks North Star Borough Home Energy Use Survey, we mailed postcards to a random sample of about 5,000 households. It's an online survey and it was open from mid-July to December 1st. Just under, I guess it was supposed to say just over 350 responses were reported. The response rate was about 7%. Northern Arizona University master's student Georgia Roberts estimated the economic models using survey data. And we looked at the willingness to pay for electric thermal storage heaters. Oh, I see there's a question in the chat. Mike asked about is similar real life research being done on heat pumps? So actually, I want to do a field experiment on air source heat pumps, something very similar where we would install air source heat pumps in some homes in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. And we're writing a proposal right now. We have to get funding to do that, but know that, yes, I am very interested in that. I'm interested in doing a field experiment like we're doing a North Pole on heat pumps. There is research being done on heat pumps, not a field experiment, but looking at how they perform in cold weather. CCHRC NREL is currently doing some tests in their cold chamber on air source heat pumps that are marketed as being appropriate for cold climates. And I think that Tom Marsick may have recently published a paper on that. I can send, I'll look for it and I'll send the link to Jomo and Jomo can send it out to folks after the meeting. From that Fairbanks North Star Borough survey, we were interested in calculating the willingness to pay for electric thermal storage heaters. And the survey contained a dichotomous choice contingent valuation question for willingness to pay. We asked respondents if they would choose to participate in an electric thermal storage heater program if a randomly assigned bid amount, which ranged from $3 a month to $135 per month, was added to their electric bill. And we said that this would displace 100 gallons of heating fuel oil annually. Respondents were given information about the function and use of electric thermal storage heaters as a supplementary heat source in Western Alaska. And then the willingness to pay question was followed by questions to gather information about protest responses and respondent certainty. And the reason that you do that or ask those follow-up questions is some people might just be very anti-electric thermal storage heater stove. And so if that's the case, you don't want to count their bid because maybe they just hate electricity, right? And then this respondent certainty, we like to correct for that, because if you say, oh yes, I'll pay $100 a month, but you're really uncertain about it, you also want to correct for that. So you might be wondering, what is the contingent valuation method? It's a method CD is a survey method used to estimate the values of goods, services, and environmental amenities not usually exchanged in economic markets. So displacing wood burning with electric thermal storage heaters has positive externalities such as reduced air pollution, which are not accounted for in traditional pricing. Contingent valuation can be used to estimate an accurate measure of value. And so we used the estimation of the willingness to pay function uses the standard probit model and maximum likelihood techniques. That's what we used for this particular study. And this was published last month in the journal Energies. As I mentioned earlier, the master's student, Georgia Roberts, she was the lead author on it, and then me, and then 2 economists from Northern Arizona University. And some of you may remember Joe Little. He used to be at UAF and he's now at Northern Arizona University. And so what we did is we estimated the willingness to pay for using renewables to charge electric thermal storage heaters for home heating in the borough. As you can see, here's the bid amount. So the $3 to the $135. You would expect that as the amount on the monthly bill increases, the number of people who said they'd be willing to pay for that decreases. And that's just the law of demand. As the price increases, the quantity demanded decreases. And with contingent valuation questions, the way that you set your bids, you want to set your highest bid at a number that's so high that most people would say no, because what you're trying to do is find that distribution. With the certainty correction, we asked respondents how certain they were of their vote, either yes or no, on a scale of 1 to 10. And we use this to decrease hypothetical bias. And so we have in our certainty corrected model, any yes response that had a certainty level of less than 7 on that 1 to 10 scale was then recoded as a no vote for the model estimation. And our willingness to pay estimates that we found for the non-corrected model was $33.98 per month added to the electric bill. And for the certainty corrected model, it was $9.75, so just under $10 per month added to the electric bill. And so the real reason I'm here today, this was all set in context for trying to recruit people to sit for interviews with another Northern Arizona University master student. So Izzy Frazier Milanowski, she's a master student at Northern Arizona University, and she's coming to Fairbanks this week. And we'll be conducting one-on-one interviews covering energy cost burden, which is the proportion of household income spent on energy services, air quality, and then also education. She's interested in how not just one's own education, but like generational education affects energy cost burden. And so she'll be here conducting interviews May 12th through May 20th. And the interviews could potentially last approximately 45 minutes. I've seen the questions. I doubt they'll last that long, but just to be safe, she said 45 minutes. And then participants will be given a $20 Amazon gift card. And so this data will be used for her master's thesis. I think so far she only has 3 people signed up. So it'd be really great if you or anybody you know would sit for an interview, or if you can think of anybody that might be interested in doing this. I think tentatively she's planning on doing them at UAF, but I suspect she would be willing to travel to meet you somewhere convenient. And to sign up, there's a website, this tiny URL. Oh, that's supposed to be together, actually. I'll put the correct thing, or the correct link in the chat in a second. Or you can also contact Izzy at irs66@nau.edu, which is a very unfortunate email address, IRS. As I mentioned, this is a joint project between UAF, Texas Tech, and Northern Arizona University. It's funded by the National Science Foundation. And this is my contact info if anybody has any questions for me.
Oh, I guess I'll get the show on the road. So regarding those questions, if we could go back.
Yes.
particularly the one regarding cost burden. When I was looking at your website, I feel like if I was going to participate in this survey, I'd want to prep a little bit. Again, I have a kind of an anecdotal feel for how much fuel I use, how much I spent, relative prices for other things. But again, to be most informative to the researcher, it seems like I should actually kind of try to quantify those things in advance rather than sitting in front of them. Is that fair? And if so, do we have a mechanism to kind of let the interviewees know in advance the kinds of things they should pull together and try to calculate or quantify?
So in the survey that I disseminated in the last summer, there was questions asking specifically about energy costs. I will have to look at Izzy's questions again. I don't think she's asking people for specific calculations, but that's a good question. I will look into that and get back to you.
Okay, and again, now's not necessarily a bad time. Speaking of the IRS, most folks did their taxes and they may have been quantifying those kinds of things anyway. Well, all right, everybody, I would open the floor to questions. And I might be ready, Ms. Dominique, to pull that presentation back up. There was a lot of information there.
I can send you a PDF of this if you would like.
Oh, that'd be great. I just meant for right now during the discussion.
Oh, sure.
Again, I would open up the floor, everybody. Please. Ken, you're always good for a question. You got anything? No. How about you, Steve? You're our electric guru. Wow, if this is this easy, I'd just be shocked. Hey, there's Mike Music has taken himself off of blank screen. Mike, fire away.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. Good presentation. I think everyone realizes that to clean our air up, we have to quit burning stuff. And one way to do that is go to all electric. And so I understand there are incentives out available, for example, 30% tax credits for improving the efficiency of whatever it is you heat with. And I would assume they would apply to these thermal storage units as well.
I'm not familiar with the tax credits. I would have to look into that.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't mention that we're going to track how much electricity these use, and then we'll subsidize the cost, right? So the first year, and we're doing the price based on that mean willingness to pay that we calculated in the survey. And I believe it ends up being about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which is the fuel price equivalent of like maybe 348 or 350. I had it written down somewhere, heating fuel oil. If you're heating with a boiler.
So you say that basically the participants are made whole relative to the increased electric cost.
So we're based on that willingness to pay survey, we calculated what that translated to in the kilowatt hour price. And then we're going to charge households that number or that rate for using these electric thermal storage stoves. So what will happen is we'll track how many kilowatt hours they use. So let's say that they use 10 kilowatt hours, but they use a lot more than that. And then you would be charged by the electric utility the amount that the normal residential rate, which is about 25 cents. And so if we're saying that we will subsidize that 15 cents, right? Because if we're saying it's only 10 cents, the difference between the residential rate and 10 cents rate that we're charging is 15 cents. So it's a 15-cent subsidy. And we'll send at the end of each month, GVA a spreadsheet and a lump check and say, put this amount of money on these accounts. And we've talked to GVA about that and they said they were willing to do it.
And we do have Meadow Bailey online. She is with
Yes.
CEA, although I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Meadow. We do have a question in the chat box from Mr. Clark. Do you have any sense of how many units will be in each or in the test area?
Yes, right now. So we had a hard time getting people to sign up for this. I'm sure everybody's aware that PM 2.5 has been a really contentious topic in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. And so I think when people hear studies where you're like measuring PM 2.5 and talking about wood heat, they just automatically assume that it's to take people's wood stoves away, which is, like I said, that's not what this is about at all. We're trying to figure out additional means of home heating to reduce the cost of home heating and improve air quality in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. And so we actually went door to door and knocked on every door in those 2 1 square mile plots. It was like over 400 households last summer. And we only were able to get, I think like, don't quote me on how many households. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do know that we're going to install 18 electric thermal storage stoves in the treatment area. And many of these households, because they're relatively small, so we're using the smaller ones because they're plug-in units. You don't have to hardwire them into the house. The larger units, you do have to hardwire. And we're running another study in Kotzebue that we're just starting to recruit for. And in that study, that we'll use the larger units, and an electrician will have to come in and hardwire those into the house. But that study is not based on air quality. That study is interested in looking at how the combination of residential energy efficiency and using renewables for home heating can reduce heating or reduce fuel consumption in Arctic communities. So it's same tool, but slightly different aims.
Okay. And I remember you mentioning that, again, as part of this, where people habituate to do things. And the question is, can they be habituated to do something different? So yeah, you mentioned, again, installing these units. You're not asking them directly to not use their wood stoves if they have a wood stove. Part of this is seeing if they'll just use this thing because it's there and convenient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a big behavioral component to this, right? Like it's easier to flip a switch on an electric heating appliance to turn the fan on than it is to build a fire in your wood stove. So there is the convenience aspect, but just because somebody has something or just because somebody says they'll do something doesn't necessarily mean they'll do it, right? So that's why we really want to install these and then see what happens, right? We'll know if people are using them because we're going to track the electricity consumption. And then we also have a series of PM 2.5 monitors in the area. And so that's how we're going to see if they affect air quality at all. I'm kind of worried that we don't have enough people in the study area to see a true difference, but I did my best recruiting and we're going to go forward with the study and we'll see if there is enough difference, or we'll see if there's enough of these electric thermal storage stoves to see if we can see a measurable difference in air quality.
Okay.
Hey, Jomo.
Please.
So Dominique, how, if you're handing out these devices, 1 per household?
So because these are so small, we're going to put 2 in most of the households that we recruited. There are, I think, there are 2 houses that just wanted 1, but everybody else, we said we had enough funding available to do 2 because we originally budgeted enough to put 50 into the treatment area, but because we had such a hard time getting people to sign up for the study. In addition to it being a political issue, the university is a land permitting requirement that anytime you put anything anywhere on anybody's land, we have to get a land permit. And I think that the legal ease of that document, I know it did. It scared people off. There were 10 or 15 people that had signed up for the study. And once they found out about this land use permit, they dropped out. They said they didn't want to do it. They wouldn't sign it. So that was another factor that affected participation.
That's the Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. So my follow-on question, though, is how do you then evaluate if it's 1 or if it's 2 of these devices in a house? And how do you determine then if it's a good size house? And I say a good size house. So let's say a small house is 1,000 square feet, a
Mhm.
mid-size is 1,500 square feet, then a large is 2,000 square feet. So you're
Mhm.
putting these small devices, then are you articulating to them where they need to put it in the house to
So we just got around we're going to order these very soon. We're going to go out to each household that wants one, and we're going to work with the homeowner to figure out the best place for it. And they're rated to heat the smaller ones about 770 square feet. So most of these houses are bigger than 770 square feet. And keep in mind, this is a supplemental heating appliance. Like, I wouldn't expect this to replace their home heat, their main source of heat. It's to see if people will use them in lieu of wood.
Oh, okay.
It almost sounds like the way I use my pellet stoves.
Mhm.
You know, it's I don't turn off my furnace. When fuel oil is very expensive, again, just having this warm block of iron, I figure is displacing a certain amount of that fuel usage. Yeah, and it's not meant to heat the entire house all by itself.
Yeah,
I
it's
do
just a supplementary. These are way too small. Even the larger ones would be a supplementary source, because I would never, and I imagine nobody else would ever want to heat their house solely with electricity, because the electricity is not always, we have power outages, right? So you wouldn't want that to be your main source of heat. This is just a supplementary source of heat.
There's a question in the chat box, and it's the same one that I had regarding the heaters and the electric usage. Do you have the granularity? Are you going to have the granularity to know, like, usage hour meter to clarify activity other than sum of electric usage? Are you going to be able to say, like, or know, like, during what time of day are these things being used, day or night?
So the method we're using for recording sends us information every 15 minutes. So we would be able to see at the 15-minute level. But for the overall study, I really just need monthly counts, right? Because I want to make sure people get reimbursed. But yeah, we should be able to see when they're being used.
That's good. All right, the floor is open, everybody. I can't really see everybody's pictures to know whether or not they're flipping themselves on or off, but if you want to just take yourself off mute, you may fire away.
Ramey here.
Mr. Wood, good morning.
Good morning. Dominique, I'm curious, do you have anybody working with you or curious in some of that community aspect of, in a sense, kind of delivering the science to community as you're trying to do the research? If it's NSF related or not, do you have anybody working with you on some of that kind of stuff?
So we have been doing some outreach. I've gone on several programs and given a few talks. We did go door to door in the area to explain the study and let people let people know that we're conducting the study and what it was all about. And we wanted to give people a chance to ask questions. We did a few community events, and I've been on what is it called? I think Coffee Cup it's a local North Pole radio program on Saturday mornings. So we are trying to do outreach, but we can always do better, right? If you have suggestions for how to better reach people, I would really appreciate it. As a scientist, and I feel like a lot of times I am not the best at communicating what I'm trying to do. Like, it was unfortunate that we had such a hard time recruiting for this study, but I think if it wasn't so politically sensitive, but maybe I just didn't do a good enough job of explaining that it's really about home energy costs. That's my primary thrust of my research, and not about trying to remove wood stoves, right? So,
Well, I wonder if there's not opportunity to have some help financially, but also with some researchers who are themselves trying to work with other researchers like yourself and communities, because that work in itself is a science that a lot in NSF and climate science and others are trying to figure out how to do that work better. So there may be an opportunity right now to to help this project, but then to help this community and these projects moving forward so that we can be more efficient in the energy of having these conversations and how much time it takes to go knocking on doors one-to-one, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, science communication is huge. And I recognize that there's a lot of work to be done in that area, for sure.
Yeah, I'll be in touch. We'll communicate further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question, Ms. Dominique. How expensive are these units?
I should have looked that up before this. Actually, I just asked for a quote for 20 of these yesterday, so I can get back to you on that. I do believe the price has gone up a little bit over time with just inflation. These are manufactured in the United States, which is nice. They're manufactured in one of the Dakotas, I think South Dakota. And so with inflation and labor rates, and I'm sure that the cost has gone up since I got the initial quote or for the budget a few years ago. I'm not quite sure, but I will send that to you. I keep saying I'm going to give you things, and now I need to remember what all I promised you.
It's okay.
So I'll let.
Yeah, in the end, I mean, we'll be curious. I'd be curious to know, there's the unit cost, but also the delivered unit cost. Again, if they're coming up from North Dakota. Essentially, how much would it be in the Woodway?
Yeah, I'll let you know for sure.
Cool.
But like I said, you would never want to use one of these unless you got a special rate for it, right? And so in the Western Alaska communities that are using these, they're metered separately, right? And they're using waste wind to charge these, and people are using that for heat. So right now, it wouldn't make sense for someone to use this in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. However, that doesn't mean in the future, let's say that there was a new wind project, then maybe these could be a possibility. But mainly I'm just interested in the behavioral aspect right now, right? Like if you have these, will you use them? How do they affect air quality? Also, how does it affect home heating costs? If you're displacing a portion of your wood or even your heating fuel oil with electric, how is that affecting home heating costs?
Mike.
Yeah, I realize that I'm out of sync with the heating system, but I've got 13 solar panels on my roof, and I'm wondering how this might help in the swing months, shorter months, keep from using my wood stove.
Yeah, you definitely could charge these using solar. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not the person to tell you how to do it, but you could definitely charge these with excess solar behind the meter. You would need to have somebody help you figure out how to do that, but that would be really smart, actually. Yeah, for sure. It would help you displace heating fuel oil if that's the means that you're using to heat your home. And the heat can be stored in them for up to, I think, 24 hours before it eventually just dissipates into the room through the insulated cabinet.
Okay, that answered one of my questions. Well, this is all very interesting. Again, Meadow, is she still on? I've heard of, in some undefined future, things like electric vehicles, the batteries in electric vehicles, things like these heating units, a place to spill excess power that then becomes usable later.
So these are a little bit different than a battery. So with a battery, like when people have like the vehicle to grid, if you have your car plugged in, let's say you're living in California and you're part of this vehicle to grid or grid to be, the electric utility can then use your battery to wield power back onto the grid, right? So for these, to call them a battery is a little disingenuous. So they convert electric heat into thermal heat, but that thermal heat can only be used locally, right? It can only be used at the household level after it's been converted into thermal heat. It can't be converted back into electricity and wheeled back onto the grid, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, no, I just meant as a sink for excess power.
Yeah, they can be used as a dispatchable load, meaning the electric utility can control them. So in a situation where you have excess renewables, instead of curtailing, like if you have more wind than you can currently use at any given time, instead of wasting that wind, you can dispatch it to these electric thermal storage heaters, which is what's going on in Kongaganak and those Chanook wind group communities in Western Alaska.
Yeah, and of
So
course,
they can
again,
help buffer fluctuations with intermittent renewables.
and indeed, certainly in deepest winter, you're just happy to have it.
Oh, for sure, because it's displacing that high price heating fuel oil. So as much sense as it would make in Fairbanks, because our heating fuel oil is pretty expensive, it makes even more sense in our off-road communities because their heating fuel oil, because of the transportation costs, is even more expensive there. I think heating fuel oil is like $8 a gallon right now in Kotzebue.
Dominique,
One of the-
you made a comment about the storage in the heaters, that if it's not used, it dissipates in 24 hours. Is that?
Mhm. Yeah, so let's say you had charged it to its full capacity and then you never turned that fan on, right? So if you turn the fan on, it discharges over a certain period of time, and I'd have to go look at the manual to remember how much, because it stores the smaller units that we're using store 13.5 kilowatt hours, which is about the equivalent of a third of a gallon of heating fuel oil. So let's say that you had charged it up to capacity, but you never turned that fan on, just because of the laws of physics, eventually that heat will dissipate into the room, even through that insulated box.
So then how long does it take to recharge? Let's say you turn it on and it wasn't charged, then how long does it take?
So if you turn the fan on and it wasn't charged, then you would be blowing air over cold bricks, right? But you could still turn the unit on and it would have the electric resistance heating elements, right? So you would still get some heat from it.
Okay,
To actually charge it up to its full capacity, I don't remember off the top of my head. My colleague, we have one of these in our lab, she did look into that, how long it took. And I will send that out to Jomo.
so I do have to say though, you talked about energy cost savings.
Mhm.
GVA talks about energy cost savings and we don't see any there. So I would be hesitant to hook into GVA with another device unless I see, it has to be a significant cost savings,
Mhm.
between your fuel oil and your electricity.
Mhm.
The other thing though is, and I may be answering my own question, though, if the power does go out, then, I can at least hook my generator into my panel. And then I guess I should be able to use that electric heater. But if it's a high demand, then, my backup generator is going to be running harder than my boiler, because at least my boiler is on again and off again as the room heats up. So I would be one of those ones that are hesitant unless I saw a significant cost savings. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, you would definitely want to look at the rate that was being charged, right? And you would want to look at the fuel cost equivalent, or the BTU cost equivalent of the electricity rate versus whatever fuel you're using at that, or whatever you're displacing. So like heating fuel oil, or if you were using natural gas, you would definitely want to do the cost calculation to make sure it makes sense. Like, for example, right now you would never want to heat with electricity because it's so much more expensive on a BTU equivalent than heating fuel oil.
Right.
And so that's why it wouldn't make sense to do that right now. But if we had a time of use rate, or a separately metered device that was using excess renewables, and so it was a lower rate that was lower than the price of natural gas, or than the cost equivalent of natural gas or heating fuel oil, then it would make sense. But you're completely right. Yes, you wouldn't want to use this if it was going to be more expensive. That would defeat the purpose.
Yeah, and again, surety is the other thing. So, and you made comment to that about the blackout.
Yeah, like I said, you wouldn't want to use this as your primary heating source. You would only want to use it as like a supplemental.
Yeah. Thanks, Donna.
Yeah, no problem.
But as the electric question, I mean, it's kind of a wash because my furnace doesn't run if the electric goes out either. And either I have a battery backup or some kind of generator system or I'm dead in the water. Neither does my pellet stove for that matter.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people don't want to give up their wood stoves, just because if the power goes out, your wood stove, you can always use it, right? It doesn't require electricity, where Toyos and boilers and most other methods or heating appliances do require electricity. So you would need a
Some level.
generator.
The big rub on wood, people have a tendency, in my experience, to hyper discount the value of their time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't count the labor that is involved in collecting the wood, right? But yeah, so that's definitely an issue.
Yeah, and I'm one of them, both for my self-fill on my fuel, but also for my pellet stove, everything else. Again, I kind of discount my time spent in BTU Saturdays, chasing those BTUs. Yeah. Certainly if I didn't, if I fully factored my billable contractor rate, it would not be a savings. So, well, thank you so much, Dominic. Okay, so I did send out, just as a reminder to the gang, I did send out with the notice for this meeting, as well as the one that I posted on the Outlook, the link to go ahead and sign yourself up for an interview. Now, so again, it sounds like you don't have to have participated last year to be a participant in the interviews this time around. That's correct.
No, you don't have to. You can be a fresh participant.
You can be a fresh participant. Okay, so again, I put that in the links, guys. So if anyone's interested, I think I'm just going to go ahead and sign up. I didn't want to because I knew that I had not upfront calculated a number of the things that it sounds like you're going to be looking for. But I might get off my keister and go ahead and do a little bit of that math just so I can participate too.
So it's been a while since I've looked at her questions, but I don't believe that she requires you to calculate anything. But that's another thing. I will go look at those again, and I will send you an email that you can forward to everyone.
Sure. If it would require some, again, just a list of those kinds of, hey, if you could think about these things or do a little, do your little research and math in advance, we can let people know.
For sure. And then for everybody that's on the call or on the Zoom, if you can think of anybody that you think might be willing to sit for an interview, I would greatly appreciate it. It's for this student's master's thesis, and I think she only has 3 people signed up so far. So she is flying all the way to Fairbanks, or they are flying all the way to Fairbanks. So
well, my hope is that this group might be a ready pool. So I'll go ahead and again, I'll put my time where my mouth is. I'll get myself signed up.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Also, this is Patty, and I just want to say that if you call your fuel company, they'll give you a printout of the quantity and the price of the fuel for how many ever years you ask for.
Yep.
So you don't have to do calculations.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the time this morning. Have a wonderful day.
If I may, before you go, just one more quick question. Again, you said that you were doing it, you chose the specific neighborhood because it does not have the gas option. Was there a particular reason for that?
That it doesn't have the gas option?
Well, I'm thinking some other hotspots around the community. I want to say there has been historically a hotspot in Hamilton Acres, another hotspot over there by the airport.
So we picked the North Pole area because out of all of the Fairbanks North Star Borough, it historically had the worst air quality. That's why it's
the hottest hotspot.
Yeah. And then the reason we wanted to avoid the area that has natural gas is because that's a confounding factor, right? And so we wanted to pick an area that didn't have natural gas yet. And so we could collect baseline data, at least baseline data for a year without that. And then as more and more people sign up for natural gas, that is going to affect it. But I believe that we can control for that in the air quality modeling. I don't do air quality modeling. It's the folks at Texas Tech, and then Srijan Agrawal and his PhD student here at UAF are involved in the project. They do environmental engineering.
Right. Sorry, sorry to put a zinger in right at the end. Okay.
Oh, no, that's all right.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Miss Pride, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thank
this.
you.
Again, we'll get the word out. I'll get this out to my directors as well as our investors, again, to see if we can increase the pool. I'll get this back out again with links to the energy group. And again, we'll see if we can get you some extra bodies.
All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right, everyone. I don't have anything specifically lined up for next week, but there's just been all kinds of interesting things being discussed, particularly in the legislature. I just saw discussions on a bill. They called it advanced recycling. And really what we're talking about is gasification or pyrolysis relative to old plastics to turn them back into usable products for petrochemical or, kind of processes, or just heat. And actually, this is the kind of thing we looked at here at FEDC 15 years ago relative to the giant gasifier unit and further work. So again, I'll be reaching out to see if I can find some more interesting topics. They're definitely getting discussed in the legislature, but we'll see if we can't bring them here to the group. All right, everybody, that's it for today. Again, thank you very much, Ms. Pride. We'll see you soon. And as far as everybody else, you just have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week.